Hello, I'm John J. DeGioia, the president of Georgetown University, and I'm joined by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend Dr. Rowan Williams, to discuss the Building Bridges Seminar. Archbishop Williams, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
You're at Georgetown for the 9th Annual Building Bridges Seminar. Could you please tell us something about the origins of the initiative in Christian-Muslim dialogue?
The origin of the seminar was really around the time of the aftermath of 9/11, when a number of people in the UK, including my predecessor, Archbishop Carey, felt it was time to take a decisive new initiative about opening up conversation between the Christian and the Muslim worlds. That was the origin. Originally a small, fairly select group of people for a brief conference. It's grown over the years into a much more serious, engaged, protracted thing.
I understand that after the first seminar, you've chaired all of the 8 following seminars, each of them lasting 3 days, involving many different locations around the world. This has been a major commitment on your part. Could you explain why you've seen building bridges as such a priority?
People occasionally ask, what is it that building bridges contributes to the Christian-Muslim dialogue that other kinds of dialogue don't? And for me, it's been the very distinctive experience of working together on texts that we're all reading, including our scriptural texts, creating a kind of common world of reference and understanding through reading texts together, and all the intimacy and ease of conversation that comes out of that kind of experience. It's mattered to me because that's been the experience of it. That's been the distinctive contribution that I think this seminar makes and others don't. There are seminars, there are consultations and dialogues that perhaps address matters of practical concern very immediately, how we cooperate on the challenges that face us all. There are grassroots exchanges, such as we have in the Christian-Muslim Forum in the UK. But this, I think, dealing with scholars who are used to dealing with texts, I think that's a good model.
Can you describe what happens in a typical Building Bridges seminar?
Typically, we try and open up the conversation to wherever we are, which is one reason why we've alternated between being here at Georgetown and being in a setting where perhaps it's a more local matter, where there are real concerns locally about Christian-Muslim relations. We've been in the Middle East, we've been in Singapore, in Istanbul, in Sarajevo, and all of those have brought their distinctive contributions, I think. So normally, yes, we would have a small number of open lectures, relatively brief talks by some of the scholars involved, which are open to a wider public. And then we've closed the doors, as it were, we've gone into private session, and we've worked together on the texts that have been chosen.
Why this approach? Why the focus on the texts?
It depends a bit, I think, on whether it's a scriptural text or another kind of text we're looking at. And as I say, we've had both. Why that focus? Initially, there was a very strong feeling that it mattered a great deal to see how the other party used their scriptures. Because, of course, it's fundamental to both Christianity and Islam that we use sacred texts. And neither of us can assume we know what it's like for the other to be using those sacred texts. We've got to watch it in operation. So we've chosen texts from Scripture to see how people naturally deal with their own sacred texts and move on from there. But after a few years of that, there was also a feeling that both of us, of course, as religious traditions, have a vast heritage of commentary and reflection on those basic texts. And we need to familiarize ourselves with those as well, and perhaps particularly with the ways in which people respond to contemporary challenges. So we've done a bit of that as well. We've chosen texts from the tradition to engage with. And that means we are all working from the same sheet. We have texts that we are agreed on using together. It gives us a common frame of reference, and that helps in the conversation.
Sure. As you've mentioned, there are many different approaches to dialogue and to Muslim-Christian encounter, some emphasizing practical cooperation, others focused on spiritual experience. Building Bridges is an approach to dialogue focused on intellectual encounter, involving theological discussions among academics. Within the wider picture of Muslim-Christian relations, what is the particular contribution of this approach?
I think that a dialogue between intellectuals in this way is one mode of showing that we take each other seriously. It's all too easy, I think, sometimes in interfaith relations to refuse the big intellectual challenges that another faith tradition puts to you. And sometimes, unfortunately, people don't even recognize that there is a dense and complex and rich intellectual tradition. So part of it is just that act of sheer respect towards one another. I'm saying to my Muslim colleagues, look, I know you've thought about this. I know this is interesting. I want to learn. I want to be enlarged and enriched by the questions you're asking. I like to think that the Building Bridges seminar is doing something slightly subversive. A lot of people at the moment
Thank you very much. And my question has to do in relation with acceptance. What role does acceptance play in this interfaith dialogue in terms of, for instance, acceptance of each other's understanding of divine revelation? So for us Christians, Jesus Christ is the Word made flesh, or the Word incarnate. Yep. But for the Muslim, he's just a mere prophet. Yep. How does acceptance of each other's understanding of revelation play a role in this conversation?
Thank you. Yes, a difficult question, really, and a very practical one in the context of dialogue. There are moments in some Christian-Muslim dialogues I've been involved in where a Muslim will say, but why can't you accept the Quran as the definitive revelation of God? Because all that you want to say about Jesus is there. At which point I have to say, well, actually, no, it isn't, and we can't take a shortcut there. And the reason I can't say that the Quran is the definitive word of God is precisely that it sees a history of revelation after Jesus, which I can't make sense of. But let's see how we've learned this. Let's see how these claims work and what kinds of habit they produce, and the conversation can go on and the enrichment can go on. But for the foreseeable future, the Muslim and I are going to disagree about this. There's no two ways about it. And part of the joy and the challenge of a good dialogue is the capacity to say those things clearly and unambiguously, while retaining the openness, the eagerness that I talked about, to say, well, the way in which you have received what there is of God in the Quran clearly has a transformative effect which speaks to me, which enriches me. I hope the same works the other way around.
Good evening, Rowan. It's the 23rd of April 2016 and it's about 1:30. So it's quite late, but before I start with my comments on some of your interfaith noise pollution, I thought I'd wish you a happy anniversary, because the 23rd of April, which is St George's Day, the 23rd of April 2016 is actually the 12th anniversary of you having me sacked from everything at St Michael's Church because I was complaining about David Peat sexually harassing me, behaving in a malicious way and wanking himself off in front of me. And as I've explained on previous videos, this was a form of mind control by which you were trying to get me to retract what I'd said and make friends with him and go along with whatever he wanted, in order for you to say that I was just a bad, malicious, disturbed person, and that you'd solved the problem of me, in that you'd traumatised me so much I'd decided it wasn't worth the bother of complaining. So 12 years on, how do you think that strategy's going then? You see, it wasn't worth selling your soul to Lucifer, was it? Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to make some more comments on your interfaith endeavours, which there are just such a massive amount of. It's an enormous area to research, because I'd say this is the area where you've put the most effort in, really, to undermining Christianity principally, but also Islam as well. I mean, Islam's been your main target of attack, along with the globalist agenda, stigmatising Muslims as crazy people who might just turn out to be terrorists any minute. One minute they're just normally walking along the street, and then the next minute they're triggered and they're a terrorist. And this is the kind of impression that you give. Not just you, I mean, it's the whole globalist propaganda about Islam and about Muslims, that you just can't tell who might be a terrorist. They might just turn into a terrorist any minute, even if they've just been living peacefully next door to you for several decades. And then, after you've told everybody this over and over again, you then criticise people for being Islamophobic. Which which is quite hilarious. And this is another form of mind control. It's like doublethink. You're supposed to think, on the one hand, oh well, the Muslim living next door to me just might turn out to be a terrorist any second, you never know when, and I can't even think that because if I do I'm Islamophobic. So this is the kind of mind games people like you play. So anyway, I'm going to talk about this lecture that you gave. I think it was in 2014, and I've already played one clip from it, but you talk about Christianity mutating and Islam and Christianity merging in this lecture. So this is the particular reason I wanted to quote from it. So you go on to say, open religious dialogue is a mark not of weakness of faith but of confidence. A Christian engages in interreligious dialogue not because the Christian is uncertain or agnostic about how significant Jesus is and in what mode, but because the Christian is confident that what there is in Jesus will not be exhausted. Well, this is what I mean by noise pollution, you see, because a Christian who engages in interreligious dialogue, assuming they're not being deliberately subversive like you, may just be doing it because they're interested in comparative religion, or they're interested in other religions. Like for example, I joined JSOC and went to JSOC because I was very interested in Judaism, and I'm not really, I mean, I was particularly interested in Judaism because Jesus was a Jew. So I suppose it was kind of motivated by the fact that Jesus was a Jew, and so it was motivated by my Christian faith. And obviously the large part of our scriptures we share with Jews as well, so I was particularly interested in Judaism for these reasons. But if I was going to dialogue with someone of a different religion, not Judaism, and if I was going to find out about it, which I have done some about Islam as well, I'm not too sure how how thinking about how significant Jesus is, I don't know what you're talking about, to be honest. I just think this is more of your impressionistic bullshit, to be honest. I mean, Islam does teach things about Jesus as well, as I've already demonstrated. So that was quite interesting for me to compare them. But I'm just a very curious person, and I'm motivated towards understanding religion, I mean studying theology and all that kind of thing. But a person who's not that motivated, who's just an ordinary Christian, who might have another job or be very focused in some other direction of life, technical things or something, I'm not too sure. It just seems to me to be a lot to do with your disposition, really, whether you're interested in dialoguing with people of any religion at all. Some people are just not interested in it. Even Christians I'm talking about, they might practice their faith, but they're not interested in studying theology or dialoguing with people of other religions or finding out about them. They just want to know the basics, really, and get on with it. So I don't really think that what you're saying has anything to do with it. If you've got a kind of academic interest in other religions and you're not being subversive, I just think however strong your belief is in your own faith is not really that relevant, to be honest. I mean, you might have a very weak faith and be thinking, oh well, perhaps some other religion is better than Christianity. I'm going to have a look around and see if I can find something that explains things better. So there's all sorts of reasons why you might be dialoguing with people in other religions or finding out about them. So you've made a sweeping statement here to try and denigrate, I think, really, people who are not interested in that or don't want to see Christianity merging with another religion at some time in the future. So you go on to say, you will not come to the end of meanings of Jesus in the most demanding of interreligious contexts. Do we believe that as we embark on interreligious dialogue? This just is, I mean, it's quite stressful, it's such bullshit. It is just noise pollution. It sounds really impressive, but it doesn't mean anything at all. You'd do the world a favour, really, if you'd just keep your festering gob shut about every subject. So you go on to say, I believe that is where we should start, and that is what should deliver us from a neurotic anxiety that hearing what someone else has to say about God and about the holy is somehow going to make us think less of the Jesus in whose spirit we begin and undertake our work. Well, you keep reinforcing the same point, don't you, that there's something wrong with people, really, who don't want to be dialoguing with people of other religions. I suppose you're talking to a bunch of academics here, but you know, even academics who study Christian theology have their own specialisms, as you very well know, and comparative religion and interfaith dialogue isn't really a huge part of the theological curriculum. It certainly wasn't when I studied theology anyway. Perhaps you think that's a handicap, but then you would, wouldn't you? But people can become immersed in studying theology, Christian theology, which is such a vast area. I mean, there's 2,000 years of Christian tradition and scripture and history and different characters within it, and then there's all of Judaism before that as well, and still continuing now. So it's an absolutely vast area. You just might not get onto other religions. There's all kinds of reasons why you might not be dialoguing with or studying other religions. So you go on to say, and I dare say the same could be said of a Muslim or a Buddhist. Undertaking interreligious dialogue, the ones who do it, to put it bluntly, are the confident ones, and the ones who withdraw from it are the ones who, at some level, may not be quite sure what they believe. Well, this is just complete bullshit, Rowan. It's just complete bullshit. Well, this is what you do, isn't it? You make out that people who disagree with you and who are not going along with your agenda, it's because they're intellectually or psychologically or spiritually, emotionally or morally deficient in some way. Only, you know, the good people are the ones who agree with you, tell you that you're wonderful and do everything that you say. So it's just really the same things that you say over and over again in order to manipulate people to go along with the things that you want. So I won't labour that point any longer because I don't want to go on too long. But I have noticed that you do say sometimes when you're giving lectures, to put it bluntly, and I have discovered, I might put together some examples of this, but I have discovered that whenever you say to put it bluntly, it always means you're talking complete and utter crap. Because, I mean, someone who's very confident in what they believe may just think, well, why would I be bothered what other people believe? You know, I'm really confident that what I believe is true. And who's got the time to be wasting looking at all these things? Because I've been forced into this situation where I've had a lot of time on my hands, where I've been able to research all the crap you talk and the evil, shady things you get up to and all the skullduggery. But the majority of people are not really in this position, are they? They tend to be working, seeing their friends, bringing the children up, spending time with their partner and all this kind of thing. And very few people have the amount of leisure time that I've got to be researching all your skullduggery. So I wouldn't even be bothering with it too much if I didn't have all this time on my hands. And I'm very confident in what I believe, but if I was just living my ordinary life, I wouldn't really have time to be going round and dialoguing with people of other religions. You know, I might do it at work if I had a colleague or something, which I did have colleagues of different religions, and we did talk about it from time to time. But who's really got the time for interreligious dialogue? You know, there's just quite a lot of life to be living for most people, regardless of how confident they are about their own faith or not. So I'll leave that there for now, but I am going to make another comment after this clip.
Open religious dialogue is a mark not of weakness of faith, but of confidence. The Christian engages in interreligious dialogue, not because the Christian is uncertain or agnostic about how significant Jesus is and in what mode, but because the Christian is confident that what there is in Jesus will not be exhausted. You will not come to the end of the meanings of Jesus in the most demanding of interreligious contexts. Do we believe that as we embark on interreligious dialogue? I believe that is where we should start, and that is what should deliver us from a neurotic anxiety that hearing what someone else has to say about God and about the holy is somehow going to make us think less of the Jesus in whose spirit we begin and undertake our work. And I dare say the same point could be made in relation to a Muslim or a Buddhist undertaking interreligious dialogue. The ones who do it, to put it bluntly, are the confident ones, and the ones who withdraw from it are the ones who may at some level be not quite sure what they believe.
Right, so you go on to say, we don't know what mutations of the church might lie ahead. I'm not really too sure what you mean by mutations of the church. I mean, do you mean another Reformation? I mean, I know that you tried very hard to change the Church of England and the Anglican Communion and other Christian denominations into the emergent church, didn't you, which isn't really Christian at all. It's just, well, it's really promoting the globalist agenda. It erodes the distinctiveness of Christianity. It really denies revelation, distinctive revelation, and it's all about nice, warm, woozy feelings that you get inside, staring at candle flames and so on, and spiritual experiences and that kind of thing. I have said some things about the emergent church before, but they're driving towards this environmentalism, you know, like looking at streams and rocks and putting their hands in soil during their worship and that kind of thing. It is all going towards eroding traditional Christian teaching in order to bring in this one world religion of environmentalism. So when you talk about mutations of the church, you've been working very hard to make it mutate, and you even claim that this is going to happen in the Catholic Church as well, in one of your videos, which I might comment on another occasion. But good luck with that one. Anyway, you then go on to obfuscate after this, just for a change, around the function of Christ. I'm not going to go over all of that because it's just too bizarre. And then you go on to say, let's step back from any idea that we have mastered, contained or possessed the revelation received. And you say that this allows us to say something is happening in the family of Christian faith and other families in which, from where we stand, Christ is made known afresh. Well, you're trying to say that all religions are the same, aren't you? And that Christ is kind of manifest in every different religion, even those who don't recognise him, which is the majority of religions. And it is true that there are aspects where different religions correspond. You know, for example, in moral teaching or in understanding of God, not everything that other religions teach contradicts Christian faith. But that's not to say that they're all the same or that they're all equal from a Christian point of view, because the traditional Christian point of view is that Christianity is a revealed religion, it's the revealed faith. It was revealed to us by God, and Christ came, God came in flesh in the person of Christ, and this was more revelation of God's purpose in the world. And all of this throughout the Old Testament and into the New Testament is known as salvation history, and this was revealed to us by God and written down in Scripture and handed on in tradition. And other religions do correspond in some of their teaching to the same things that Christianity teaches, but they're not all the same. And Christ isn't made known afresh in other religions, if that's what you're saying. I'm not even too sure what you mean by it, but the Christian understanding is of other religions is that they may have some truth in them, but they've been arrived at through a naturalistic path. They've been discovered. The truth has been discovered where it's apparent in other religions rather than directly revealed as it is in Christianity. And obviously other religions have their own teaching about where the ultimate truth lies. They wouldn't agree with that, because if they did, they'd be Christians. So each religion is distinctive, I suppose, is what I'm saying, and this is part of your agenda, to erode the distinctiveness. There's causing all of this conflict and making it out to be religious conflict, when really it's kind of political and financial and a lot to do with territory and globalists like you stirring up wars and providing propaganda and such. And this is to give the impression that people of different religions just can't live in peace together. Therefore, we'll have to abandon all our different religions and all subscribe to one religion, and the uniting religion, of course, will be environmentalism. So anyway, you're going to say, so that the coming of Christ in flesh becomes not the end and the seal of the process of revelation, let alone a process of discovery, but becomes the opening generative moment for an infinite network of relationships whose ramifications we cannot and do not know and need not know. Well, you are declaring yourself a non-Christian here, aren't you? Because Christ is really the end of Revelation, because there's no new revelation after the apostolic age, according to Christian teaching. So if you think that there is new revelation after the apostolic age, then you're quite obviously not a Christian. This is completely contrary to Christian belief of every denomination. Nobody disagrees about this. This is why, for example, the Mormons are not regarded as Christians, even though they say that they are, because they say they've got new revelation, and also that the new revelation they have is more important than the old revelation that we've always had. So, you know, and this is why we can't accept the Quran. I've already mentioned that, because it was revealed after the apostolic age. This is what Muslims believe. So it would contradict Christian faith if we were to accept that. So this is just complete nonsense. You're declaring yourself a non-Christian here. And what you're trying to imply is, oh, you know, we're all going... This is the emergent church again, that we're being drawn into some great new understanding that lies at some time in the future, and we haven't quite got there yet. And of course that's going to be environmentalism, isn't it? We already know where it's going. So you go on to say, so if the form of religious convergence at some unimaginable time in the future is inaccessible to us, that ought not to mean that we step back from the encounter of dialogue because we're not sure. So here's where you declare that you believe, because you're talking about Islam really in this lecture that you're giving. You do mention Buddhism as well, but you're principally talking about Islam and Christianity. So you say that they're going to converge at some time in the future. Well, this is just complete nonsense, because as I've explained already, that they can't converge without losing their distinctiveness, because some beliefs are contradictory. They can't both be true. A person either has to believe that neither of them are true, or that one is true, or that the other is true. They can't both be true at the same time, because they contradict each other. And the other thing is as well, even if we accept only a naturalistic explanation for religion, the fact is that religions don't converge, they diverge, if anything. So if any convergence were taking place, that would be being forced by some external agency, and their minions like you, they're useful idiots. So Islam and Christianity are not going to converge. They contradict each other. We all know what we believe. We're either a Christian or a Muslim, or we're neither a Christian or a Muslim. You can't be both at the same time. You can be one or the other, or neither. Even if we did not engage in interreligious dialogue, the same thing would be true. We do not know what the Church will be eschatologically, except that it will be where Christ is all and in all, which is a wonderful and inspiring formulation, and not at all practically useful, except in that ultimate form of usefulness which takes away spiritual anxiety from our souls. Well, there's quite a lot of nonsense in this latest noise pollution. So here we are. Even if we did not engage in interreligious dialogue, the same thing would be true. We do not know what the Church will be eschatologically, except that it will be where Christ is all and in all. Right, so, well, eschatology is the study of the end times. So what you're saying is that at the end time we don't know what the end point of the Church is. So well, if you're a Christian, you do know really, don't you, because it's been revealed to us that Christ is going to return as judge, and that the Church is the bride of Christ, and Christ and his Church will be united. Christ the bridegroom will be united with his bride, the Church. So we do know, if we're Christians, what the Church will be eschatologically. I mean, why have we got the word eschatology if we don't know what the outcome's going to be? This is just completely ridiculous. And I mean, the other thing that is also quite bizarre, yeah, it says this in the Nicene Creed as well, about Jesus. He will come again in glory to judge the living and the dead, and his kingdom will have no end. And you do claim to believe the Nicene Creed. And also, I mean, the other thing that is quite bizarre is that Islam also teaches that Christ will return to judge his own followers. So I'm not quite sure why you would be at all unsure about what the eschatological outcome would be, when actually on this thing, the end point of the Church, Christianity and Islam actually teach the same thing. So that's quite bizarre, isn't it, really? I'm going to read this surah actually, which explains this. So this is what Islam teaches about the remote future of the church. Surah Al-Imran 3:55. When God said, "Jesus, I will take you back and raise you up to me and purify you of those who are unbelievers, and I will place the people who follow you above those who are unbelievers until the day of resurrection. Then you will all return to me, and I will judge between you regarding the things about which you differed." So actually, you're supposed to be talking about Christianity and Islam converging, but when there is a point of actual convergence, you don't even mention it, so that's quite strange, isn't it? And might lead some people, like me for example, to think that you have an entirely different agenda, and that you actually want to do away with both religions rather than even converge them. So the eschatological the end point is the same for the church in both Christianity and Islam. So I'm just going to go over this statement again that you've made, because there's even more nonsense in it than I've explained already. Even if we did not engage in interreligious dialogue, the same thing would be true. We do not know what the church will be eschatologically, except that it will be where Christ is all and in all, which is a wonderful and inspiring formulation, and not at all practically useful. Well, this is a quotation from St. Paul's letter to the Colossians, chapter 3, verse 11, although of course you don't tell us that, do you? And the interesting thing is, I mean, of course, it's actually got nothing to do with eschatology, this writing of St. Paul. There's many things in the New Testament that are related to eschatology, but this isn't one of them. And you've quoted it entirely out of context. I'm just going to read this passage, Colossians chapter 3, verses 5 to 11, because I think they might be quite useful to you actually. So here it says, Colossians chapter 3, verse 5, "Put to death therefore whatever in you is earthly, fornication, impurity, passion, evil desire and greed, which is idolatry. On account of these the wrath of God is coming on those who are disobedient. These are the ways you also once followed when you were living that life. But now you must get rid of such things: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have stripped off the old self with its practices, and have clothed yourselves with the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge according to the image of its Creator. In that renewal there is no longer Greek and Jew, circumcised and uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave and free, but Christ is all and in all." So it's talking about the identity of baptised believers here, and it's not talking about eschatology. So you go on to say that this statement, that Christ is all and in all, which is a wonderful and inspiring formulation, and not at all practically useful, except in that ultimate form of usefulness which takes away spiritual anxiety from our souls. Well, taking away spiritual anxiety, you do talk about anxiety a lot, and you seem to think the purpose of Christian life and faith is removing spiritual anxiety from the soul. Well, quite frankly, you should have spiritual anxiety in your soul, because you've sold your soul to Satan, you're on the path to damnation, and it would be quite strange if you didn't have spiritual anxiety in your soul. In fact, if you haven't got spiritual anxiety in your soul, in the predicament that you're in, then I think that there's something seriously wrong with you, which I do think anyway, but I won't go into that now. But you should have spiritual anxiety in your soul, so don't be looking to remove it until you've changed your attitude. and your behaviour, you should have spiritual anxiety in your soul. That would be the biggest sign of health for you in the situation that you're in and in the way that you behave. So you go on to say, even if we didn't engage in interfaith dialogue, we would not know the remote future of the church, whatever some might like to believe. Well, I've just explained all of that. We do know the remote future of the church if we're Christians. And so the encounter with other faiths is not, in that sense, different in kind from ordinary faithful Christian living. I don't know what that's supposed to mean. Because in ordinary faithful Christian living we continue in our dialogue with fellow Christians and with those who do not share faith in our society. Well, I'm not sure what you mean by dialogue, really. Are we always discussing what we believe? You like to do that a lot, and it's really to subvert what people believe rather than to help them or arrive at the truth or anything useful. So you go on to say, we continue to discover how God is active and where God is encountered, unexpected and sometimes shocking places. Once again, if one thing is revealed in Jesus Christ, it's surely that the act of God in shocking places is one of the things you may very well look out for to discern where revelation happens. Well, I suppose, you know, him rising from the dead was quite shocking, and he did associate with people who, very proud religious leaders, were quite shocked about that as well. But he lived a very holy life. There was no sin in him. He was a perfect man. He was the incarnation of God. And, you know, if you're a Christian, you believe that that's the truth, so you wouldn't really be finding things in other religions that contradict Christianity very helpful. That's not to say that they don't have some very good teaching and so on, but if you're a Christian, then you're dedicated to this path, and you're not really looking to find Christ in shocking places, really. I'm not too sure what you mean by that. And then you say that you're looking in these shocking places, and this is the place you may very well look to discern where revelation happens. Well, revelation doesn't happen because there's no new revelation after the apostolic age. So this is just complete nonsense. Look, I'm not bothered whether you're a Christian or not. You can believe whatever you like. I'm quite offended that you're presenting this crap as if it were Christianity. You're giving people a very misleading impression, and your intention in all of that is being subversive. You're not got any good intention towards Muslims or people of any religion, or to Christians or atheists or anybody. You've just got a subversive agenda, and you want us all down the path that's going to do us all in, whatever we believe in. So I'm going to leave it there for now, because I've been waffling on for quite some time. But you do go on so much about interfaith matters that it's hard to know just quite where to wade into the mire. So I've started here. So I'll leave it there for now, but obviously I'm not going to be seducing any priests over the weekend, so there's no need to worry about that. So have a nice weekend then. Hasta la próxima.
We don't know what mutations of the church might lie ahead. But to borrow a phrase from Joseph O'Leary in his excellent work on religious pluralism, Christianity and religious pluralism, if we don't know what the mutations of the church may be ahead of us, we do as Christians believe that the function of Christ is a constant, that what is perceived and apprehended as the act of God in Jesus Christ remains what it is what it is eternally. To say that lets us step back from any idea that we have mastered, contained, or possessed the revelation received, allows us to say, something is happening in the encounter between the family of Christian faith and other families in which, from where we stand, Christ is made known afresh. So that the coming of Christ in flesh becomes not the end and the seal of a process of revelation, let alone a process of discovery, but becomes the opening, the generative moment for an infinite network of relationships whose ramifications we cannot and do not know and need not know. So if the form of religious convergence at some unimaginable moment in the future is inaccessible to us, that ought not to mean that we step back from the encounter of dialogue because we're not sure. Even if we did not engage in interreligious dialogue, the same thing would be true. We do not know what the church will be, eschatologically, except that it will be where Christ is all and in all, which is a wonderful and inspiring formulation and not at all practically useful. Except in that ultimate form of practical usefulness which takes away spiritual anxiety from our souls. Even if we didn't engage in interfaith dialogue, we would not know the remote future of the church, whatever some might like to believe. And so, the encounter with other faiths is not in that sense different in kind from ordinary faithful Christian living. Because in ordinary faithful Christian living, we continue in our dialogue with fellow Christians and with those who do not share faith in our society, we continue to discover how God is active and where God is encountered in unexpected and sometimes shocking places. Once again, if one thing is revealed in Jesus Christ, it's surely that the act of God in shocking places is one of the things you may very well look out for if you're trying to discern where revelation happens. So, to sum up, or attempt to sum up, these still rather unformed thoughts on revelation and interfaith dialogue.